Hi, welcome to Weird Place. My name is Lee, and today let's learn how to play Break, a post-apocalyptic fantasy RPG for 3 or more players that blends OSR-style play with aesthetics inspired by classic anime, Studio Ghibli, and JRPG video games. This game was written by Reynaldo Madrigal and illustrated by Carlo Tartaglia. Thank you guys for sending us this book. This is not a sponsored video, but a review copy was provided for us. It's the 4th eon of the Outer World, and the planet is recovering from a war that buried empires and ravaged the Earth. The Sun Machine no longer orbits the Outer World, and the planet is now divided into hemispheres of day and night. Few have emerged to attempt to reboot civilization. Most struggle day to day just to survive. A handful of brave and impetuous adventurers wander the planet, discovering forgotten truths, performing great deeds, and shaping the Outer World's fragile future. Break uses only 20-sided dice, and you will roll dice on 4 different occasions. Checks is where you're trying to roll equal to or under a target number in order to succeed. Contests are where you are trying to roll equal to or under a target number, but higher than the character that you're competing with in order to succeed. Attack rolls is a little bit different. You're trying to roll over, equal to or over the target number in order to succeed. And tables. Tables are simple. You roll to see what happens and compare it to the table. Bonuses and penalties. They can be applied to rolls from an ability, say like from your calling, could be from a rule, or it could be given at the GM's discretion. There are both minor bonuses and major bonuses, ±2, ±4, and the same goes for penalties, both 2 and 4. It is important to note that in this game, you will sometimes need to be rolling over a value and sometimes you roll under. So the bonus will be either added to or subtracted to the roll that you're doing, depending on what you're trying to achieve. And the same goes for penalties. Edges and snags. Edges give characters another chance to succeed, and snags give you a chance to fail. So if you have an edge, you roll twice and you use the most favorable result. If you have a snag, you roll twice and you use the least favorable result. You can only benefit from either one edge and suffer from 1 snag per roll. If you have both, they cancel each other out and nothing happens. Checks. Whenever your player character's physical or mental capabilities are in question, you're going to be making a check to see if you're successful or not. Checks use your aptitudes, and these are the physical and mental capabilities of your player character. You must roll under an aptitude in order to succeed a check. So your aptitudes are might for tests of strength and brute force, deftness for executing precise and graceful movements, grit for tests that require determination, resilience, insight for quick thinking, observation and comprehension, and aura to exude a commanding presence. Contested checks, or contests. When entering a contested check, characters must use the appropriate skill or aptitude, and both players will make a check. A contestant wins if they make a check and they roll under your chosen aptitude and their opponent doesn't. If both player characters make their check, then the winner is decided by the following set of rules. So, if a contestant has a special success, that means they would win. But if not, then if a contestant has an edge, if nobody has an edge, then the contestant with the largest bonus would win. If there are no bonuses, a contestant with the largest penalty would lose. And if not, then the contestant with the highest natural roll underneath your aptitude would win. Those are the rules for how contests work. If both sides are the same, then it's a stalemate, and you can either go again or pivot and try something else instead. Just a little note, contests don't necessarily have to be of the same aptitude. So someone can be doing a contest of a might versus insight or a deftness versus grit. So I think it's pretty open in what you want to choose to do your contest in. Special success. If an unmodified roll exactly matches the target number for the check, a special success is achieved. That means that you'll get additional benefits from that success decided by you and the GM. So if you roll exactly the aptitude number that you're trying to roll under, that's a special success. Journey. Whenever you move between settlements or adventure sites, you use the journey rules to determine what happens on the way. When in a journey, a map will be provided to you by your GM. Things you'll have on the map are points of interest, which will be settlements, ports, and different adventure sites. You'll have routes that connect all these points, and these can be different types of routes like paths, which require a guide or navigation tools, otherwise you're gonna get lost. There can be roads. You can't get lost on a road, safe, and you can travel twice as far as you would then on a path. and waterways, which are bodies of water where you can't get lost following one, and you would travel twice as far with the appropriate vehicle as you would in one day without. There is adverse terrain. So in difficult terrain, you would travel half as far as you would in one day normally. And there's impassable terrain, which means you can only pass with a suitable mount, vehicle, or ability. And there's harmful terrain. Entering this type of terrain, and for each day that you spend here, you need to do a successful grit check, or you will contract the ailment that is linked to that type of terrain. Navigating. To avoid getting lost, you will need navigation tools or a guide. You might have someone in your party with the guide ability, or you can always hire a follower to be your navigator. Trailblazing. A guide can always attempt to move across the map without following an established route. You must perform an insight check, and if you succeed, you'll progress towards your destination. If you fail, you gotta roll on the lost table. Getting lost. If you're trying to follow a path without any tools or a guide, and you failed your trailblazing attempt, you might end up somewhere that you didn't want to go. Roll on the lost table. If you roll a 1 to 12, it's just a few missteps. You travel half the distance that you were trying to go. If you roll 13 to 16, you took a wrong turn. You travel as far as you intended, but in a completely wrong direction. And if you roll a 17 to 20, you went full circle. You are back to where you started. Scout. A party can appoint a scout. If the group has a map encounter, the scout can make a deafness check in order to avoid detection. If they succeed this check, the scout will be able to circle back and inform the group of what lies ahead, giving them one turn to prep before anything happens. If the scout fails their check, then the scout is spotted. They will have to deal with the encounter by themselves for one turn before the party will arrive to assist them. A day's travel. After a day's travel, you're gonna have to consume a ration in order to avoid starvation and fatigue, and you can choose to whether camp or rush during the night. If you choose to camp, you can sleep to avoid fatigue, you can consume your rations to avoid starvation, and you can scout around, look for things in the area, and you can perform different camp activities like crafting, socializing, hunting with a deafness check in order to increase your rations. You can go foraging with an insight check in order to get rations. You can graze for your animal companions. And if you choose to rush, you will forego sleep, but you will progress an extra day worth of travel. However, you will suffer fatigue, which would be a penalty to all your rolls until the next time you can sleep. Exploration. When you move through adventure sites, which are unpredictable and dangerous areas, you will use the Explore rules. Your GM will provide a map with locations to be visited, like this one, and will also provide access points to enter the location from. Player character positions. When you move through an adventure site, players will be choosing specific positions for their characters. The rear guard. The rear guards defend the back, and you would shield other players from traps and blasts from behind. Observer. You will be in the middle of the pack, and you study the surroundings looking for small details. You are protected by both the rear guard and the vanguard in this position. Vanguard. You protect the front and you peer into the unknown. You would defend the front, and you might shield other players from traps and blasts from the front of the pack. And the Scout. The Scouts will move ahead and provide information for potential threats in upcoming rooms. You arrive first, and it takes one turn for other players to arrive to help you if you are detected. Movement type. When in an adventure site, you have to choose a speed that your party will move. You can go cautious, where players will be able to discover all the hidden items, traps, and encounters without having to do any checks. However, enemies would have one turn to prepare for you due to your noisy investigation. You can move hasty, where the players are one location away from threats that are pursuing them, environmental or creature, and you cannot perform any insight rolls to detect hidden perils, and your footsteps would alert guardians of your presence. Or you can move stealthy, which you would move and investigate unnoticed. In order to move stealthily, you have to do a deafness check. If you succeed, you can enter the location undetected, and you may move to the next. If you fail, you will alert the guardians of your arrival. In order to investigate, you would have to do an insight check. The player character position would determine what you learn from this investigation. If you're in the vanguard, you would learn about what dangers lie ahead, like any ambushes, traps, etc. If you're an observer, You can find out all the hidden details of a room, things like doors, gems, treasure, etc. And if you're in the rear guard, you will learn about dangers from behind you. Location actions. So once you deal with the immediate challenge of a room, you can perform 1 turn's worth of action in that location. You can inspect. Inspecting would reveal any location details, any hidden items and clues. You can linger, where you pause to take a breather, or you can move and move on to the next location. Encounters. When you're in a journey and in an adventure site, your GM will prepare encounter tables, like Wandering Encounter and Guardian Encounters, that the GM will roll periodically to determine what happens as time passes by. Managing both your time and your actions is essential. Things that will trigger encounter rolls will be things like making lots of noise, inspecting a location fully, or lingering for too long. Negotiate. If you want to convince an NPC to act against their better judgment or do something that they would normally not do, you must use the rules for negotiation. So to do so, choose your negotiator, somebody in your party, and decide with the GM a clear and achievable objective for the negotiation. And then you perform a contested check based on your tactic. So for example, if you're doing a physical intimidation, you could use a might versus grit. If you're doing something deceitful, then you could use aura versus their insight. Advanced rules for complex negotiations are available in the book. There's rules for attempting to persuade a small group or a mob, and there's even rules for performing multiple linked negotiations as well. Fight. When you get embroiled in a battle with an adversary, it's time to enter the fight rules. When you're fighting, you're going to reference 4 key combat values: your attack bonus, your defense rating, your total hearts, and your speed ratings. This will be based on your character, abilities, and defined in character creation. Speeds. There are 4 different speeds in this game: slow, average, fast, and very fast. Defense ratings. When you're targeted by an attack, you will use your defense. Base defense is 11 for small characters, 10 for medium, and 9 for large characters. Armor can add bonuses anywhere from +2 to +8, depending on what kind of armor you can wear. It goes from light, medium, heavy, and extra heavy. And you can have shield bonuses, and a speed rating might also give you a bonus if you're fast or very fast. Battlefield. Combat is played in the battlefield, and it's divided into different areas. Weapons have different ranges, and you can refer to the chart for the ideal range for each different type of weapon. The battlefield has a set of base areas. There's the area where the player characters start, and the area where the adversaries would start, and contested areas. Custom areas can also be added for more advanced battles where terrain can be difficult, unreachable, or maybe they'll incur ailments like poison gas or something. There's several conditions like cramped, harmful, isolated, obscured, sheltered, and suffocating, which might affect your range and your defense rating. These will be described to you by your GM. How to fight. A fight has 3 different stages. Fight start. The team that started the fight or prepared an ambush will go first. If there's any doubt, a deafness contest is necessary, with the highest deafness character going first and applying their speed rating bonus to this check. Ambush. If you want to try and attempt an ambush, it requires a contest of the lowest deafness character on your team versus the highest insight on the adversary's team. If you succeed, you get 2 turns before the enemy acts, and if you fail, you take the first turn, but there are no other benefits. Rounds. A round of combat is approximately 10 seconds of battle time, and it is split up into turns. All player characters go in turn, alternating as they want, and then all adversaries will have their turn afterwards. On your turn, you can move and perform an action. Move. You can make a move to change the battlefield area that you are in. If your speed is slow, you cannot move areas unless you use the extra move action. If your speed is average, you can move up to 1 area away from where you are currently, and if your speed is fast or very fast, you can move up to 2 areas away. Actions. There are 4 different types of actions you can take in combat: combat actions, custom actions, assist actions, and tactical actions. Combat actions. Attack. Roll a d20, add your attack bonus to the results. You cause damage if your attack matches or exceeds the opponent's defense rating. Rolling a 20 is always a success, and rolling a 1 is always a failure. On a success, you do 1 heart of damage. If your attack exceeds your weapon's listed extra damage, if you roll over a certain threshold, you'll do an additional heart of damage. If you fail, no damage is done and you've missed your attack. A note on dual wielding: you can attack with a melee weapon in each hand, but you can only attack with your second offhand weapon if the first attack had failed, and the second attack will have a minor penalty or a -2 to the roll. Defend. You can choose to forfeit an attack and defend yourself or another character instead as an action. The person being defended will then gain a +2 to their defense bonus on their next turn. A character can only have up to 2 defenders at any time. Custom actions. If you want to try something strange or unorthodox, this is where you can do them. You can do an attack stunt. Attack stunts is you're making a regular attack, but you suggest an extra condition as well. For example, I swipe at the Bandit Queen with my staff in order to knock her weapon to the floor. The GM will define a condition for failure. For example, if you try that, you will drop your staff as well if you fail. And then you agree on the wager. If both the player character and the GM agree, then you can do an attack roll, and on a success, you do both the damage and the agreed upon effect. And if you fail, you miss and you get the failure condition. If you can't agree upon a wager, revert it back to a normal attack. Please note that player characters can also be the target of GM NPC attack stunts. Combat trick. On the other hand, you can forego an attack entirely to put an opponent at a disadvantage with a combat trick. So what you do is define the trick. For example, I'm going to pull the skeleton's cloak over his head. The GM will determine the difficulty and see if a check or a contest is necessary. For example, if you make a deafness check, you can see if you can whip the cloak over his face, and then he will be blinded until his next turn. A note here on combat tricks or attack stunts: there is a rule of diminishing return. If you attempt the same trick again on the same target, you will suffer a snag. Assist actions. Attack assist. You might, instead of attempting to deal damage, you can help distract or find an opening for an ally instead. Your ally will receive a minor bonus or a +2 on their next attack. This can also be combined with another attack assist from another player to the same character for a major bonus of +4 on their next attack. An attack assist will only last for 1 turn. A tactical assist. You can also help allies do impossible things. For example, you can hurl a friend to reach an unreachable area of a colossal enemy. The GM will tell you if a check or a contest is necessary, or if it's something that you can automatically do. Tactical actions. Use an ability. You can use one of your character's special ability in combat as an action. They're usually from your calling or your species. Extra move. You can make an additional move, or if your speed is slow, you have to use this action in order to move 1 battlefield area. React. You might declare a condition that is fulfilled only when this action happens. For example, you can say, if someone enters the room, I'll wait and trip them up. If the reaction never happens, then you can act at the end of the adversary's turn. First aid. If you're in the same battlefield area as whoever needs healing, you can perform first aid. That will stop a character from dying who has suffered a near-death or mutilated injury if you can get to them within 2 turns. You can also wake a character who is knocked out cold, but they won't be able to make any further combat actions during this combat. Flee. A fight ends if one side decides to flee. The GM can decide that a deafness contest is necessary for a clean escape, and if on a failure, the opposing team would be able to have 1 final turn in combat. Action recap. There are a lot of combat actions in this game, so here's a quick recap. You have your tactical actions. These are using your ability, doing an extra move, miscellaneous like drinking a potion or getting an item, reacting, and fleeing. Your combat actions are your standard bread and butter, attack or defend. Your assist actions are attack assists and tactical assists, and your custom actions are your attack stunts and combat tricks. Damage. Your health is tracked in 2 different ways in Break, with hearts and injuries. Hearts. You start every fight with your full heart total. The number of hearts lost in any single attack will be determined by the weapon type or the ability used in that attack. When an attack reduces your hearts to 0 or less, you will have to roll on the injury table. If you were reduced to 0 from a source that is not combat, like a harmful battlefield condition, there is an alternative table that you will have to roll your injury for. If your injury permits, you can keep fighting with 0 hearts, but every time you get hit again, you will have to roll on the injury table and take a new one. A little note here for adversaries: when you reduce an adversary to 0 hit points, they don't roll on the injury table, but you can choose to either slay them or spare them. You can also choose to leave them with an injury of your choice, like a distinctive scar to remember you by. Injuries. Injuries are lingering ailments that you will get after you lose all of your hearts. Whenever you get an injury, you will have to roll on the injury table. The first injury you receive, you'll check the green results, also called the light injuries. And then once you get a second injury, you will use the orange results table called the severe injuries. And once you get a third one, you will use the red results, also named the critical injuries. Damage types. Damage types have many flavors, but they can generally be described as mundane damage, like physical, and special damage, which would be magical in nature. Treatment of injuries. Treatment. Organic characters. Treatment works for basic injuries, and all players are already familiar with the rudimentary medical practices that you need. If your injury needs a special sort of treatment, it will be specified on what kind of treatment is necessary. For biomechanoids, you do not repair naturally, so removing an injury needs extensive repair by the work of a gadgeteer. Prosthetic replacements. If you want, you can have synthetic limbs grafted to you in organic characters and in biomechanoid classes. A gadgeteer capable of doing such work is necessary though. Magical or advanced treatments. Magical treatment is possible, but extremely rare. Almost all of this knowledge was lost long ago. Death cure. There is no known cure for death, but the immortal and the undead walk the earth as defying proof anyway. If there is a way, the cost is probably pretty big. Sundering. You can also attack inanimate objects in order to break them, and there are tables and rules with how to destroy a door and hit points for different types of materials and stuff like that. Colossal Combat. Colossal combat is also possible. You can fight creatures that are colossal in size, and they'll have different zones that you can hit. The GM will provide a creature map with all the different zones laid out, and maybe the monster might have core points, and in order to kill the monster, you will have to strike the core points. You don't have to strike all the other points before aiming for the core point. Perils. Whenever you suffer physical or mental harm or some sort of alteration, you are experiencing a peril. The most common ones are falling/impact injuries, and they have a table in the book for that. And caustic or burning injuries, which also have their own injury table that you can roll on. Some perils will come in the form of ailments, which are lingering effects that will alter and impede your character's capabilities. There are a lot of different ailments, and there are way more detailed descriptions of each one in the book, but here's just the general list of them so you're kind of aware of what might happen. You can be ballooned, blinded/deafened, chibbed, disoriented, dispirited, fatigued, jellified, overburdened, petrified, putrefied, restrained, starved, suffocated, terrified, and toppled. Downtime. Whenever there's a deliberate and significant break in your adventure, you can indulge in a little bit of downtime. Downtime has to be at least a week's worth of in-game time, and each downtime activity that you do has to last about a week. In downtime, you can spend time doing several activities if you want, all with their own rules and mechanics. Crafting. You can craft, modify, or repair an item of your choice. Crafting has several disciplines, and there's different items and a bunch of possible outcomes, so we're not gonna go over everything here, but as a quick overview, here's generally how it works. Your rank, your level, and your crafting discipline, for example, you can be a cook, you can be an alchemist, etc. This discipline will determine what type of items that you are able to craft. You have to have access to specialist kits and/or a workshop that you can do your crafting in. You have to have the right materials and additives, as each item has a specific list of items that you need in order to craft it. And once you have all of that, then you can do your crafting roll using the ability that grants you your crafting discipline. If you succeed on your roll, Congratulations, you did it, you crafted your item. If you fail, you will have to roll on the crafting mishaps table and see what you got. Healing an injury. Healing requires a relaxing environment and regular meals, things like getting a dwarven massage or going to an elven spa. If you do so, then you can remove injuries starting with your least severe first. It is important to note here though that rest will not recover your severed or mutilated injuries. To heal those, you're going to need advanced or magical treatment. Identify a relic. Doing this requires a check, usually insight or aura, and on a success, it'll tell you what that relic is. On a failure, you'll get an edge the next time you try to identify this relic, and you will risk rolling on the reckless research failure table. Preparation, where you spend the week preparing and you can leave a certain amount of money separate and leave some item slots blank so that in your next session of the adventure, as those problems arise, representing the fact that you've already prepped for these issues, you can just have these items and stuff that you need because you've left money and space in your inventory aside. Recruitment. You might attempt to convince someone to follow you for something more than just a paycheck. You must find a follower or NPC that is lower rank than you and perform a contested check of aura versus grit. If you succeed, you'll forge a social bond with your new recruit, and they will be loyal as long as you provide food, shelter, and a cut of all the spoils. If you fail, they reject you. You can try again next time with an edge on that roll. Reputation management. You can try to engineer a reputation that will benefit your group later during your downtime. This will require an aura check. If you succeed, your group will gain a minor bonus on all rolls when you lean into that reputation, but if you fail, you're gonna go unnoticed and no one either knows who you are, or you might create the wrong negative reputation of your group. In subsequent downtimes, you can also try to spread your reputation to a different area, change your reputation, or even create a new separate reputation with an alter ego. Research your next adventure. If a location with a specialist in what you're looking for is available, you can use them to ask the GM something about the next adventure, and the GM will reveal information in the form of adventure hooks. For example, how do I slay the Queen of Weeping Shadows? The PC might ask, and the GM will answer, only the Red Sage from the Buried Kingdom would know the Queen's weakness. So, gives you a lead on what to do next. Socializing. You can attempt to increase your heart total by connecting with someone. Socializing requires a player character, companion, an NPC, or anyone willing to spend time with you. It will require a contested check of aura versus grit. If you succeed, you gain +1 heart total until your next downtime, and you can establish some sort of social bond with that character. If you fail, you had fun, but failed to connect in a meaningful way. If 2 player characters are trying to socialize together and you both succeed, then you both get a +1 to your heart total until the next downtime. Taming. You can attempt to tame a wild beast in order to make it an animal companion. You cannot tame a beast that is equal to or higher in rank than you, and it will require a contest of aura versus grit. If you succeed, the beast is now your animal companion, and you can assign it to be a pet, a mount, or a pack beast depending on what type of animal it is. If you fail, you cannot do it, you can't tame it, it's just too wild, but you do get an edge if you want to try it again next time. Training your companions. You can also spend time training your followers. You can do a contested check of aura versus your companion's grit. If you succeed, the companion will gain 1 training point. If you fail, you gain an edge the next time you try to train them again. You can spend your training points to enhance your companions in several different ways. Weapon proficiency, 2 points. Skill acquisition, 4 points. Enhanced movement, 4 points. Value boost, 2 points. Unique endeavors. You can decide with your GM a different endeavor that you want to achieve that isn't covered here and work out the objectives and necessary checks in order to achieve whatever it is that you want to do. Social bonds. Social bonds can be forged in downtime through the use of certain abilities or at the GM's discretion. A bond describes the nature of the relationship that you have with the other character. You can have unlimited bonds with different people, but only one type of bond per person. Whenever you use your bond to perform a check, you gain a minor bonus to that check. And there are some abilities that require a social bond in order to be activated. Reputations. A reputation determines a community's opinion of the player characters. Player characters can engineer their reputation through their downtime activities. If you have a reputation, you can benefit from a small bonus when your local reputation is in play, or a minor penalty if it's working against you. The GM can also use your reputation to influence the reactions from different factions and individuals in the world towards your group. Companions. Companions can be hired or bought to help you on your adventures. Each player character can have a maximum of 2 companions at any time, and they belong to 4 different types. There are followers, who are sapient companions who are able to use weapons and equipment. They have different stats and prices and can level up during downtime. There is the scamp, the scholar, the guide, and the custrel. And you have your companion animals. You have pets, which are small, loyal animals with useful abilities, like the growl, buzzer, pudge grub, fuzzcoil, scree, and the purr. You have mounts, who are creatures that are intended to be ridden long distances. Things like the jumbug, mokudo, rokudo, and the largzard. And pack beasts. These are large characters that you can tame and use to carry excess items or pull carts. So we have the shaggy bumpo and the grubbish. Animal companions can also provide assistance in combat with mounted combat, so you can use the mount's speed and their abilities when doing your move action, and they can also help you with defense. If the action targets your mount, you would use their defense instead of yours. You can also direct your mount to attack on your turn using their stats as well. Some creatures are trained for combat and battle ready, and they can benefit you with an attack assist. Companions will follow your commands to the best of their ability, but if you make an unreasonable request, it will trigger a loyalty check from the GM. That's pretty much all the rules you need to play Break. And right now we're gonna do a little overview on character creation and all the different callings and species and stuff like that. But it's not gonna be super in-depth on character creation, just a little overview so you can get a taste of what the world's like. These are the different classes that you can choose for your character. So there is the Factotum, which is a well-rounded and balanced character, but has lower might in general. You have the Champion, who has a high might and grit, but low insight, all brawn, little brain. We have the Sneak, who is high insight and deafness, but low might and grit, good at subterfuge and stealth. And then we have the Raider, who has good might and grit, but low aura. They're built for movement and speed on the battlefield and good at range attacks. Then we have the Battle Princess, or Battle Prince, who has a high aura and deafness, and they typically use bright magic, but they have low insight because they follow their heart everywhere. The Battle Princess is good for defending their allies, and they're good at negotiation and other social endeavors. Then we have the Sage, who has your standard high insight, low might, well-rounded magic users, of course. Then we have the Murder Princess, or Murder Prince, who has a strong grit and aura, but a low deafness, and they are typically using destructive magic, but have martial proficiency. They are intimidating and menacing both on and off the battlefield. And then last but not least, we have the Heretic, who has a high grit and aura, but low deft and might. They have interesting skills that are focused on summoning different sealed names, which are strange and individual spirits who will help you in battle most of the time. Here are the different species that you can play in Break. There is the Human Native. These are just the standard humans of the outer world. They used to be the undisputed rulers, but other things happen. We have the Human Dimensional Strays. These are humans that come from a different world, a more familiar world to us, and somehow have landed in this fantasy world. They are people like blue-collar businessmen or artists from university student, and they have somehow found their way into this world and are now trying to make sense of it. We have the Chib, who are just these little guys. We have the Tenebrates, who are beings that thrive in the profound darkness. They possibly were once human, but have been warped by a sunless existence. We have the Rai Neko, which is like a lithe, deft cat people. The Groon, which is like a large orcish type. We have the Prometheans, who are immense physical creatures and considered perfect beings. We have goblins, dwarves, biomechanoids, and elves. There are traits that you can add for your characters, both positive and negative, and there's also quirks. You can also choose the homeland and history depending on which species that you choose. It'll come with different ones, and it'll give you different starting gear and different outlooks on life, which can kind of help you with your role-playing. Thank you so much for watching this. This was Break, the RPG. We hope that you learned a little bit on how to play, and if your GM randomly sprung a game on you, I hope this was helpful. So if you want a more in-depth character creation video or more stuff about the lore, let us know. We can definitely make a video. Thank you so much to all of our patrons. Of course, as always, you can join our Patreon in the link down below. And see you next time, I guess. Yeah, thank you so much. Again, Break RPG was written by Reynaldo Madrinian and Carlo Tartaglia. Thanks so much for watching this, you guys, and we'll see you in the next one. Ow! I scratched my leg! Ow! Ow! I wanna go outside, huh? Okay.
Let's finish this.
Let me finish this one run.